When others scavenged for supplies in the apocalypse, I picked up a baby. The whole school said I was cold-blooded, heartless, and had no conscience. But not only did I change her diapers and mix formula for her, I even strapped her to my chest every day. My childhood friend called me crazy, and I sneered. What do you know? She's my secret weapon. Until one midnight, my pants vanished into thin air, and this little thing spread open her chubby hands, and my pants suddenly reappeared. My name is Wu Dao. On the 7th day after the zombie outbreak, the whole world had already gone completely rotten. A few still living classmates and I fought our way into a wealthy residential complex, where the occupancy rate wasn't high and the zombies were sparse, but every single one of them was crazed with hunger. My face was splattered with black blood, and the knife in my hand dripped with sticky fluid as I kicked open a half-closed door. There were dragged bloodstains in the living room, and the nanny was slumped in the corner against the wall, long since cold, her eyes still fixed on the wardrobe in the master bedroom. After moving aside the low cabinet blocking the door, I pulled open the wardrobe door. A foul gust mixed with the stench of urine and mildew rushed out, and inside was a little child curled up. Her hair stuck out like a sea urchin, and she was so filthy her original color was impossible to make out. Her diaper was swollen into a ball, and she was clutching a baby bottle covered in green mold, too weak to even lift her head. When she saw me, she didn't cry. Instead, she laboriously raised her chubby little hand, her fingers smeared with moldy cake crumbs, and reached toward me, mumbling indistinctly, "Nana." At that moment, it felt like something had smashed into my brain. I actually shoved the knife back into my waistband and reached out to scoop her up. She was as light as a bundle of ruined cotton, and she smelled so bad it could sting your eyes blind, but I still didn't let go. Liang Wei strolled in chewing a wilted apple, and the moment he saw this scene, he exploded. Holy shit. Where'd that kid come from? A kid can still survive in this messed up world? Xing Lin pushed up his glasses and calmly asked, "Wu Dao, what do we do with her?" Liang Wei grabbed his bird's nest of hair. "What else is there to do? Leave her. We don't even know how many days we'll survive ourselves, and you're going to drag around a useless lump of flesh and wait to die?" I stayed silent for a long time, staring into the child's dark, bright eyes, and in the end rasped out one sentence. "We'll take her for now." I started searching through the family's things. There were diapers and wet wipes in the cabinets, and on top of the wardrobe, there was a travel bag stuffed with a few small clothes and several cans of formula. I filled a basin with warm water and expressionlessly washed the little thing clean. She was unbelievably well-behaved, letting me turn her over this way and that, only pitifully sucking on the empty bottle now and then. Around her neck hung a jade tag engraved with the name Shen Qingqing. I put on a fresh diaper for her, dressed her in clean clothes, mixed a full bottle of formula, and stuffed it into her hands. Then found a strap and bound her securely to my chest. Right in the middle of all this, she suddenly swung her little feet, leaned in, and took a bite out of my chin with her soft little milk-scented mouth. Then went right back to sucking her milk as if nothing had happened. I froze for a moment, and the corner of my mouth curled up uncontrollably. Damn, maybe I really had gone crazy. Downstairs, the dozen or so surviving classmates were waiting there. When they saw the baby hanging from my chest, their eyes nearly popped out. Class monitor Lin Xiaoyou's brows twisted into a knot. "Wu Dao, this child is a ticking time bomb. If she cries, we're all done for. How can you be so irrational?" I didn't even raise my eyelids, because I'm human. Her face instantly turned white. Zhang Xiao cut in sarcastically. "Who doesn't know that you, Wu Dao, are the most heartless of all? You suddenly pick up a kid. Don't tell me you're planning to use her as emergency rations?" The 3 words, emergency rations, made the air freeze. Jiang Heyun went up and slapped her hard, making her stagger back 2 steps. The smile in her eyes was full of ruthlessness. "What the hell does what Wu Dao does have to do with you? You're so eager. Want to be his mom or something?" Zhang Xiao covered her face and screamed. I slowly turned my head and stared at her, enunciating every word. "Even if we're stockpiling meat, we'd pick someone like you first, soft-skinned and tender flesh, able to walk on your own. And when it's time to butcher you, you wouldn't even be able to resist, and there's plenty of meat too." She trembled all over in fright, her legs going weak and almost collapsing to the floor. The vice class monitor still wanted to smooth things over, but I couldn't be bothered to listen and turned upstairs, protecting Shen Qingqing in my arms. That apartment was Shen Qingqing's home. It was big enough, so we'd stay here tonight. A few girls voluntarily went to cook, but the pressure cooker exploded, rice grains embedding themselves in the ceiling, and the ribs on the stove were burned into black charcoal. Liang Wei rushed into the kitchen howling his heart out. "It's all ruined." Wu Dao, you'd better do it. I single-handedly tossed together a huge pot of dough drop soup and first ladled Shen Qingqing a bowl of broken-up dough lumps. Picking out extra egg ribbons, I blew on each spoonful to cool it before feeding her. The way she opened her mouth waiting for food was like a little sparrow. She got it all over her face as she ate, and I fed her while wiping her clean. In the end, I only drank the dregs left at the bottom of the bowl myself. She started rubbing her eyes, and I knew she was sleepy, so I carried her to the bathroom and turned on hot water. Lin Xiaoyu followed over and lowered herself to offer help, but I closed the door. No need. If you die, I'll still have to rely on myself in the end. In the bathtub, Shen Qingqing slapped at the water and giggled foolishly, splashing me all over. I washed her clean first, then let her play in the tub while I took off my dirty clothes and rinsed myself off. The hot water washed away the bloodiness and exhaustion of the past few days. While I was washing, my calf suddenly itched. I looked down, and that little thing had somehow crawled out of the tub and was squatting by my feet, grabbing my leg hair and tugging hard at it, grinning with her toothless little mouth like she'd found treasure. My face went black. I quickly dried off and got dressed, then wrapped her up like a rice dumpling and tossed her onto the bed. She rolled around once, thinking I was playing with her, flailing her little arms open, those sparkling eyes enough to make anyone surrender. I sighed and pinched under her armpits to toss her up into the air, and she laughed like a fool until she got unbearably sleepy. Rubbing her eyes and yawning, she burrowed into my arms and fell asleep in less than 2 minutes. Looking at that grimy little face that had just been washed clean, I felt that I really was broken, having a father's heart at such a young age. After settling her down, I went downstairs and laid everything out for everyone. I sat on the single sofa, my tone cold and devoid of warmth. I'll keep that child with me all the time. Tomorrow, we'll split up. Whoever wants to come with me, step over here. Whoever doesn't, each of us can rely on our own abilities. That child won't endanger you. Jiang Heiyun was the first to dart behind me. Wu Dao, you can't just throw me away now that you've got a little bean. My philandering dad forgot about me long ago. If you don't want me, you might as well feed me to the zombies. Liang Wei and Sheng Lin also came over without a word. Sun Haonan got anxious. Wu Dao, do you have to split everyone up? We can help you take care of the child too. Lin Xiaoyu softened her tone. We're girls, after all, so we're more careful and can help. Liang Wei sneered. Help? Other than shouting at the top of your lungs all the way here, what else have you helped with? Sheng Lin pushed up his glasses. Zombies don't leave room for improvement, so why don't you go try discussing it with them? They were arguing in a mess, and I couldn't be bothered to keep listening, so I got up and went upstairs. The sounds of argument behind me gradually faded away. Basically, they were just afraid they wouldn't survive without me. I carefully laid down beside Shen Qingqing. She was sleeping sprawled out. The gold bracelet on her chubby wrist pressed against the bedsheet, and the little bells jingled softly. I was so exhausted that the moment I closed my eyes, I sank into darkness. In my dream, I was running for my life from zombies. And as I ran, my pants suddenly disappeared. My bare butt felt chilly, and I woke up with a start. I shot upright, switched on the lamp, looked down, and sure enough, my pants were really gone. Shen Qingqing sat beside me with a head full of messy hair. Her diaper had been taken off crookedly and tossed aside. The bedsheet was wet in a patch, and probably because she felt cold, she was sticking her butt out and pawing at my clothes. Those eyes were black and bright, innocent to the extreme. Through gritted teeth, I asked, "Where are my pants?" Shen Qingqing, who could barely understand a little human speech, stretched out her chubby little hand, and my pants suddenly appeared in it. My pupils contracted sharply. I snatched the pants over, my heart pounding like a drum. Spatial ability. This little thing actually had storage space. No wonder she had managed to last so many days in the wardrobe. It probably wasn't just because her aunt had hidden her well. I pulled my pants on at top speed, then held her chubby little hand and examined it over and over, my mind in turmoil. In the apocalypse, no one knew better than me what storage space meant. I had thought I'd picked up nothing but a burden that only knew how to drink milk. Who the hell could have guessed this was clearly a cheat God had dropped into my lap? I immediately tested her. I handed her a biscuit, and the moment her little hand touched it, it vanished. When she stretched her hand out again, the biscuit reappeared, and she even took a bite with an ah woo, smacking her lips as she ate. The space wasn't big. It could hold a few cans of formula and a few bottles of water at most, but it was enough to save lives. I stared at the jingling gold bracelet on her wrist and suddenly understood something. So I pressed the bracelet farther down, hiding it in the folds of flesh. This secret had to stay buried. Among the people around me, quite a few had crooked intentions, especially Zhang Xiao, whose eyes kept drifting toward Qingqing's hand. I didn't sleep a wink for the rest of the night. The little thing in my arms kept wriggling around, and whenever she occasionally mumbled a blurry hug, I gently patted her back. I had originally planned to just scrape by with her one day at a time, but now things were different. If she could hide supplies, that meant we finally had something to rely on in the apocalypse. I even started thinking that just running away wasn't enough. We had to find a place to settle down so she could grow up in peace. At the first light of dawn, I started packing. The outside of my backpack was stuffed full of formula cans and diapers, making me look like some idiot apocalypse stay-at-home dad. But the really important medicine, lighters, and a few spare knives, I had Qingqing secretly store in her space. She only half understood, but as long as I put something in her palm, it would vanish in the blink of an eye, then reappear with another blink. I tried teaching her, hide it, don't give it to anyone else. She tilted her head at me, then suddenly made the baby bottle in her hand disappear and reappear again, giggling at me. I couldn't help kissing her on the forehead, my heart burning hot. When I went downstairs, everyone was already packed and ready, and there was a fawning look in all their eyes. Zhang Zhao's eyes were still red as he apologized in a low voice. Wu Dao, I was being a smart-ass yesterday. Let me come with you. I can help you look after Qingqing. Lin Xiaoyu also said, we talked it over last night. From now on we definitely won't hold you back, and we'll follow your lead. I swept my gaze around them, neither refusing nor agreeing, and only tightened the strap across my chest a little more. Shen Qingqing hugged her baby bottle, swinging her little feet, the bells making a muffled sound from within the flesh. Jiang Heiyun came over and lowered his voice. Why were you yelling like a ghost in the middle of the night? I didn't sleep well all night. Without changing expression, I said, had a nightmare. He chuckled and reached out to poke Qingqing's cheek. Little bean, you'd better protect uncle from now on. She babbled and waved her chubby little hands, then suddenly grabbed Jiang Heiyun's finger and wouldn't let go, smearing his hand with drool. Liang Wei sighed beside us. It's over, it's over. This little milk baby has completely coaxed out your dad's soul. I ignored him, tightened my grip on the knife, and pushed open the building door. In the morning mist, a few zombies lunged over at the sound. I lowered my voice and said to Shen Qingqing, hold tight, don't make a sound. She shrank into my arms, her little hands clutching my clothes tightly. Quiet as a fake doll. I charged forward, the blade flashing as black blood splattered. Behind me, Jiang Heiyun, Liang Wei, and Sheng Lin followed, carving a bloody path with me. This time the girls didn't scream, and instead raised mop handles and swung them around wildly without any technique. Step by step, we made our way out of the residential compound through the morning fog, moving toward the outskirts of the city. There was a logistics park there, easy to defend and hard to attack. A place I'd already scouted out long ago, though before I hadn't dared hope we could stay there long term. Now it was different. I needed a high wall, a clean courtyard, somewhere Shen Qingqing could learn to walk inside, instead of crawling through piles of zombies. While resting on the road, I avoided the others and tested Shen Qingqing's space again. When no one was paying attention, I stuffed a pack of compressed biscuits into her hand, and with a blink, she put it away. I asked her, where are the biscuits? She spread open her little hand, and the biscuits appeared. I asked again, mommies? She suddenly froze, her little mouth drooping as her eyes reddened, and my heart clenched hard. I quickly picked her up and bounced her gently. Okay, we won't talk about it. Just keep it hidden. She lay on my shoulder and mumbled something that sounded like hug, her little hand clutching the collar at the back of my neck as she slowly calmed down. At that moment I realized she didn't understand nothing. She was just too little. Everything she had lost was lodged in her heart and couldn't turn into words. I lowered my head and kissed the fuzzy hair sticking up on top of her head, whispering, "You've got me from now on." She didn't respond, but before long I felt her even breathing against my chest. She had fallen asleep. By evening, we settled down at an abandoned gas station. After clearing out the few zombies inside, it was already completely dark. We lit a small fire, and everyone sat around it sharing dry rations. Liang Wei watched me feed Shen Qingqing rice cereal and couldn't help sighing. Wu Dao, when do you think this kind of life will ever end for us? I wiped the mush from the corner of Qingqing's mouth and said flatly, when we build a base and let her grow up safe and sound. Everyone looked at me like I was crazy. Sheng Lin pushed up his glasses. You're serious? Just because of a milk baby, you want to build a base? I adjusted the sleeping little thing in my arms and held her more securely, then swept my gaze over them. At first I just wanted her to live. Later I realized she needs a home. Then I'll build one. No one spoke again. The fire crackled. Lin Xiaoyu bit her lip and said softly, Count me in. Zhang Xiao echoed her agreement. I looked at them without saying I trusted them or didn't trust them. In the apocalypse, people's hearts change easily, but this one in my arms is someone I picked back up from the wardrobe with my life on the line. No one gets to touch her. Late at night, I held Shen Qingqing and dozed lightly against a corner of the wall. She suddenly squirmed, her little hand moving unconsciously, and a can of formula dropped out of thin air onto my lap. Then a baby bottle, then my knife. I quickly covered her little hand and whispered, "Put it back, be good." She smacked her lips, and those things disappeared again. I let out a breath of relief, cold sweat seeping down my back. She still couldn't fully control this ability. If someone with ulterior motive saw it, the two of us would both become meat on someone else's chopping block. Over the next few days, we collected supplies while pushing forward toward the logistics park. On the surface, I carried the heaviest bag, stuffed full of formula and diapers, and everyone thought this little burden was exhausting me. Only I knew. The things that truly kept us alive were all in Shen Qingqing's little space. Antibiotics, water purification tablets, several gun parts, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. I stuffed cotton into the bell on her wrist so it could never make a sound again, but every time I looked down at her, she would raise her baby bottle and smile at me. At last, we stood before the gates of the logistics park. High walls and iron fencing, the warehouses intact. As long as we cleared out the zombies wandering inside, this would be our future home. I hitched Shen Qingqing up a little higher, drew my long blade, then turned and said to everyone behind me, "From today on, this place is called Qing Garden." No one objected. They might not believe a baby could change anything, but they believed in my blade. I stepped into the wreckage-strewn compound, and with each stroke of my knife, black blood splattered. Shen Qingqing nestled quietly in my arms, occasionally reaching out to catch a drifting fleck of ash and giggling. In the deathly silent apocalypse, that laughter was like a seed striking the soil. That night after the cleanup, we lit a bonfire in the largest warehouse. Everyone was sprawled out from exhaustion, but Shen Qingqing was wide awake. She crawled out of my arms, braced herself against a cargo crate, and shakily stood up. She took 2 steps, plopped onto the ground, didn't cry, climbed back up by herself, and staggered toward me. I caught her. Tilting up her little face, she suddenly raised a small hand, and a can of beef appeared out of thin air and smacked into my knee. The few people around us who saw it all froze. Liang Wei stammered, "That can just now?" I quickly pressed the can back away and whispered to Qingqing, "Hide it. Don't show anyone except me." She blinked, and the can was gone. I raised my head, looked at their shocked faces, and said expressionlessly, "You saw wrong." Zhang Heyun was the first to react, punching my shoulder. "Damn, you've kept this from me so well." Behind his lenses, Sheng Lin's eyes shone startlingly bright. "So she's our biggest trump card." I held Shen Qingqing tighter. She tugged at my ear, yawned, and drooled onto my shoulder. I said, "Right. So if anyone dares touch her, I'll make them end up worse than the zombies." That night, the warehouse was very quiet. I sat against the wall with Shen Qingqing asleep in my arms, her chubby little hand clutching my collar. Over and over, I thought back to the moment I opened the wardrobe door. She was dying, holding up a moldy baby bottle and asking me for milk. And I, covered in blood with a grim look in my eyes, reached out and scooped her into my arms. From that day on, my backpack was always stuffed with formula and diapers, making me look like an idiot on the surface. But in truth, I was carrying the most precious secret in this apocalypse in my arms. At first, I just didn't want her to die. Later, I wanted to give her a home. And later still, I decided to build a base for her. In this rotten world, she was the only reason worth drawing my blade. The bonfire gradually died down, and all was silent. I lowered my head to look at her sleeping face, and that absurd yet unforgettable scene flashed through my mind again. In the middle of the night, I woke with a start, my pants gone without a trace, while she stood there with a head of wild, messy hair and an innocent look in her eyes. I asked hoarsely, "Where are the pants?" Shen Qingqing, barely able to understand a little human speech, stuck out her chubby little hand, and Wu Dao's pants suddenly appeared in it. Wu Dao's eyes widened in shock as he stared at that bundle of his pants, his brain freezing for a moment. He reached out, wanting to put his pants on first and talk later, but the pants in Shen Qingqing's chubby little hand vanished again. Shen Qingqing seemed to be getting addicted to the game. She placed her little hand on Wu Dao's chest, and he suddenly felt a chill on his upper body. His t-shirt was gone too. Before anyone could say anything, he watched in shock as Shen Qingqing put her little hand back on the bed. A bad feeling rose in his heart. He shot out his long arm and had just scooped Shen Qingqing's chubby little body into his arms, then plopped down on the floor so hard he nearly broke his tailbone. Great, even the bed was gone. Kids have boundless energy for exploring. She clearly still hadn't had enough fun. Wu Dao quickly grabbed her little hand, deliberately softening his voice and even adding a coaxing tone. Wait, be good, we can't hide the bed too, otherwise you'll have to sleep on the floor. Shen Qingqing immediately ran to the wardrobe, stood on tiptoe to open it, took out a new quilt and pillow from inside, and very thoughtfully spread them out on the floor. Seeing that she had no intention of taking out what she'd hidden and was still busily working away with great enthusiasm, Wu Dao pinched the flesh on his leg. He still wasn't used to talking while naked, as everyone knows. When asking a child for something, sometimes you have to use something even newer to distract them from what they're already tired of playing with. And he had nothing on him except fur, so he could only cup his hand and say, "Qingqing, give me the clothes you hid, and I'll give you the good thing in my hand." Shen Qingqing was indeed attracted and ran over to grab Wu Dao's hand, trying to pry open his fingers to see what was in his hand. When she couldn't, she even tried to bite it, smearing drool everywhere. Wu Dao said with disgust, "No biting. Look how dirty you've made my hand. Let's trade. My clothes. Give me my clothes, and I'll trade with you." Standing in front of Wu Dao, Shen Qingqing still didn't want to take them out, so she puckered her little mouth and kissed Wu Dao on the cheek. Wu Dao shook his head. "I want the clothes." She actually started taking off the clothes she was wearing. Luckily, she hadn't learned that skill yet, and only exposed her soft little belly as she wriggled from side to side. Wu Dao emphasized again, "I mean my clothes that you hid." After the two of them talked past each other like chickens and ducks for quite a while, Wu Dao finally got dressed. Then he held Shen Qingqing seriously and said, "You can't just hide things whenever you want in the future, or I'll get angry." Next, he spent half the night finally teaching Shen Qingqing that not everything could be hidden. Only the things he said were okay. Then, like training a puppy, he repeated it many times before finally teaching her. As for Shen Qingqing awakening an ability, he wasn't surprised at all, because he had awakened too. And it was even 3 types: ice, lightning, and earth. His abilities were too weak right now, so he didn't even want to use them. At 5 in the morning, everyone got up one after another. Wu Dao dressed Shen Qingqing neatly, and had her put away everything in the room, mainly Shen Qingqing's own things. Enough formula to last half a year, 10 big packs of diapers, and all her clothes and little blankets. He didn't know how much space Shen Qingqing's storage space had, and he was afraid stuffing in too much would make her uncomfortable. Seeing that she was fine, he sighed in relief and took her out of the bedroom. He first made milk for Shen Qingqing, and only after plugging her little mouth with it did he carry her over to sit on that single armchair and speak directly. "I awakened a spatial ability last night. From now on, I'll store everything. After we eat, let's each go our own way." Jiang Heyun's eyes lit up. "Wu Dao, you're really amazing. I only awakened water and strength abilities. I didn't expect you to awaken so many. You're practically an all-around fighter. I don't care. I'm sticking with you from now on. Let's survive together." Wu Dao irritably kicked him, but did not refute him. Liang Wei and Sheng Lin still hadn't awakened. Their eyes dimmed, yet they were even more determined to follow Wu Dao. Their family situations were complicated, and now that they couldn't go back, they had to keep up with Wu Dao, who could keep up both mentally and physically. The remaining classmates all panicked. They hadn't expected Wu Dao to be serious. He had actually been lucky enough to awaken a spatial ability as well. Anyone with a brain knew that with this ability, plus strong combat power, the chances of survival would rise to 80%. Sun Haonan lowered himself and said, "Wu Dao, we're all classmates. In times like these, only classmates can truly trust each other. Don't be so heartless. We're not completely useless either." Wu Dao gave a half smile. "Indeed, you can serve as reserve rations." The moment the words reserve rations came out, it was like a precise slap striking Zhang Zhao's face. Zhang Zhao's face turned deathly pale. She could no longer bear it and screamed, "Wu Dao, don't go too far. So what if you have powers? How can you talk like that? How can you, a grown man, be so petty? How can you fuss over things with a girl like me?" Wu Dao reached out and smoothed the tuft of hair sticking up on Shen Qingqing's head. There was one lock that just wouldn't stay down, so he kept pressing it flat. What he said was even colder, "Petty? Look at the world outside. No one is an exception. Zombies won't spare you from biting just because you're a girl." Zhang Zhao's lips trembled, and she covered her face and sobbed. This time, even Lin Xiaoyu said nothing. She lowered her eyes, not knowing what she was thinking about, and after quite a while looked up. Her expression complicated as she looked at Wu Dao, as if she had made up her mind. "Wu Dao, from now on, Our group will only listen to you. If you want to raise this child, we won't object anymore." Wu Dao ignored them. After getting something to eat, he stood up and began collecting the things in the room. Shen Qingqing cooperated very obediently, and before long they had packed everything up cleanly. As for Shen Qingqing's little chubby hands constantly causing trouble, those people didn't pay it any mind. After packing up, Wu Dao left directly. Before leaving, he even made a full bottle of milk for Shen Qingqing to drink and play with. They reached the first floor smoothly. After one night, quite a few zombies had already gathered outside. The noise of coming downstairs alarmed them, and they roared as they crazily lunged over and pounded hard on the door. Wu Dao instinctively covered Shen Qingqing's eyes and gripped the knife in his hand. He silently counted. There were about 23 zombies. He lowered his voice and said, "There are only 23 now. Deal with them as quickly as possible, then head to that 24-hour unmanned convenience store at the entrance of the residential complex." No one objected. Everyone gripped their own weapons. Jiang Heiyun swept his gaze over everyone and added in a low voice, "I'll say this one more time. If anyone dares scream, I'll be the first to kill them." Several girls guiltily backed away, biting their lips hard and trying their best to suppress their fear. At that moment, Wu Dao gave Jiang Heiyun a look. Jiang Heiyun turned sideways and placed his hand in the door's groove. Wu Dao pressed the door open button. Bracing the door with his foot, Jiang Heiyun pulled it open a crack, and 5 zombie heads impatiently squeezed in. Wu Dao raised the knife with both hands and brought it down in one stroke, and 5 rotten human heads rolled onto the ground. Jiang Heiyun immediately shut the door. The zombies were pushing so hard, he nearly couldn't close it. Liang Wei, Sheng Lin, and the other boys helped force it shut, barely managing to close the door. Everyone sat on the ground, panting heavily for breath. Wu Dao had just cut off 5 heads with one slash, and now the shock had numbed the web between his thumb and forefinger. He pressed his lips together and lowered his gaze, only to see quite a bit of blood stuck to Shen Qingqing's tender, fair little face. The little one was just about to stick out her tongue to lick her lips. Frightened, he immediately pinched Shen Qingqing's mouth shut, used more than 20 wet wipes to scrub her like wiping a bud, and even disinfected her with alcohol before he felt reassured. Children's skin is sensitive to alcohol. Her little face was rubbed bright red, and she was drowsy and about to fall asleep. Fortunately, Shen Qingqing was obedient enough and didn't make a sound. Wu Dao put 8 layers of masks on her and repeatedly taught her not to casually lick messy random things. He only felt relieved after making sure she nodded. Shen Qingqing was absent-minded. Wearing so many masks was uncomfortable, so she looked around everywhere. Her little eyes were very sharp, and she pointed at one of the heads, indistinctly shouting that she wanted it. Liang Wei was panting as he picked up that head. How was this child not scared and even wanted to play with the head? Suddenly, with a clang, a white crystal fell out from the cracked gap in that head, still stained with whitish brain matter. In an instant, everyone's breathing paused. Only Shen Qingqing pointed at the glittering crystal, stretching out her chubby little hand and softly whimpering. Children generally like glittering things, and Shen Qingqing was no exception. The nanny wouldn't let her play with them before, and now that the nanny wasn't here, she wanted to play with it. Sheng Lin reached out and picked up the crystal, involuntarily swallowing. Could this be the crystal core mentioned in novels? Wu Dao reached out and took it, wiping it with a disinfectant wet wipe. The pure white crystal was like inferior jade, and it didn't look particularly alluring. However, something like this might be useful in the future, so he very naturally put it into his pocket. Shen Qingqing's eyes were fixed on his pocket, and there was only one thought in those big eyes. She wanted to play. Wu Dao touched her frizzy little pigtail. "You can't play with it." Shen Qingqing, angry, rammed her head hard into Wu Dao's chin, and those big eyes clearly showed that she was angry. Liang Wei used a knife to split open the other heads, and found another one. He casually wiped it on himself and said with some regret, "Looks like not every head has one. We killed so many on the way here before. We must have missed some." When reading novels, I saw that crystal cores could be eaten directly and could even awaken powers. I wonder if these can be eaten. Should we try it? Sheng Lin said leisurely, "You eat it. When you turn into a zombie, for the sake of our brotherhood, I'll crack open your head." Liang Wei shivered from what he said, and immediately handed the crystal core to Wu Dao. "Sheng Lin, how are you still this perverted? You actually want to crack open my head? Are you even a good brother anymore?" Wu Dao said coldly, "One more time." It was still Jiang Heiyun holding the door, with Liang Wei and Sheng Lin assisting. The moment the door was opened, those zombies, stepping on rotting flesh, squeezed over impatiently. Wu Dao slashed down again, and heads rolled to the ground. The door wasn't closed, and Wu Dao chopped off heads several times in a row until they littered the floor. Aside from the few of them working, the others still didn't dare step forward at this moment. The fact that those girls weren't screaming now already counted as helping. In less than 10 minutes, Wu Dao had chopped off all the heads that squeezed in. Liang Wei then sat on the ground cracking open skulls, and in the end they got a total of 8 crystal cores. Since they didn't know the exact use yet, Wu Dao kept them for the time being. The knife in Wu Dao's hand was already chipped and basically unusable, so Jiang Heyun went upstairs to find a fire axe and brought it down to Wu Dao. They opened the door and stepped out over rotting corpses and bones. The residential complex was so quiet that it made people panic. Wu Dao walked at the very front, heading with a clear goal toward the shops at the entrance of the complex. From far away, they could see several zombies wandering around the storefront entrance, and on closer inspection, there were even more zombies inside. Shen Qingqing suddenly pointed at a female zombie in a plaid shirt covered in blood and called out in a babyish voice, "Auntie," and even waved her little hand very excitedly. Wu Dao held her little hand. "Don't speak." Shen Qingqing, who had been cooperative these past 2 days, was disobedient this time and kept waving at that female zombie. Her little body struggled, wanting to throw herself into the zombie's arms. Usually not one to cry, tears kept streaming down her face as she called out, "Auntie, Auntie," even more eagerly. Luckily, she was wearing an 8-layer mask, so that faint little voice didn't amount to much. Wu Dao signaled to Jiang Heyun and the others with his eyes, and a few of them rushed forward with their blades, hacking down several zombies in the blink of an eye. Seeing Auntie lying motionless on the ground, Shen Qingqing let out a wail and burst into tears, even throwing away the baby bottle in her hand. Luckily, Wu Dao covered her mouth in time. "Don't cry, your Annie has fallen asleep." Shen Qingqing's crying stopped abruptly, tears still hanging from her eyelashes. As she looked at Wu Dao pitifully, still wanting to cry, Wu Dao coaxed her again, "You can't cry anymore, or you won't look pretty." Girls seemed to be born especially sensitive to those words. Although tears were still hanging from Shen Qingqing's eyelashes, at least she stopped crying. Wu Dao finally breathed a sigh of relief and carried the fire axe into the shop. This small store had doors both inside and outside the residential complex, and they were all automatic. There was a small side door next to the main entrance. He had been here before and knew it led to a small storage room, where there should be supplies inside. With 2 swings of the axe, he split open the lock above, kicked the door open, and a zombie with its whole body rotting lunged out, only to have its head chopped off by Wu Dao with 1 slash. Upon entering the storage room, the first thing that came into view was half a room full of mooncake gift boxes. Since this was an upscale residential complex, the storage room was piled with gift boxes worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands. Wu Dao told Shen Qingqing to put away all the gift boxes. Shen Qingqing obediently did as she was told. After collecting the gift boxes, she moved on to the other goods. There really were quite a lot of things in this warehouse, and they were all good stuff. There was also a small cold storage room inside the warehouse, filled with premium chilled meat and high-end fruit. Most of them were gift boxed, and there was also quite a lot of seafood and the like. It was clearly just a small shop, yet it was surprisingly well stocked. Wu Dao took a cherry and gave it to Shen Qingqing to hold and play with. She had thrown away the baby bottle she had been holding earlier, so she had kept picking at a loose thread on Wu Dao's clothes. After taking everything, Wu Dao led Shen Qingqing out, only to see 2 groups of people confronting each other outside. One side was students, and the other was residents of this complex. A man wearing gold-rimmed glasses, with refined features and an outstanding bearing, looking every bit like a highly educated elite, stood at the front, and he spotted Wu Dao at a glance. Meaningfully, he said, "This young classmate, can we talk?" This elite guy really did know how to talk. The moment he opened his mouth, he put the other person in an unequal position, just like an adult coaxing a child. Wu Dao didn't even glance at him and simply turned to leave. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, sunlight refracting off his lenses and making it impossible to read the expression in his eyes. Seeing that he was about to leave the complex, the man said, "You're still students, you don't know how to drive, and you don't have a car, right? I just so happen to have several cars. As long as you're willing to let me leave with you." Wu Dao said nothing and kept walking. Jiang Heyun glanced at him and sneered at his face, which looked elite, but was actually so hungry it had turned somewhat sallow. "If you're asking for help, you should have the proper attitude. Do you think your cars are still something rare now? Or do you think we've never seen nice things?" Liang Wei added, "We have the cars you have, and we also have the ones you don't." After tossing out those words, they hurried after Wu Dao. Sun Haonan and Lin Xiaoyu looked at the group too, then turned and left as well. At a glance, these people were useless, old people among them, the weak among them, and some who were unbearably arrogant. It was already the apocalypse, and they still hadn't adjusted their mindset. The zombies would teach them how to behave. Just as it looked like they were about to leave the complex gates, a curly-haired old lady in her 50s or 60s charged out. She was still holding a phone with the music screen already open. "You're not allowed to leave, or I'll turn on my phone. When the time comes, no one will be able to leave." Wu Dao stopped and turned around. The old lady pointed at Shen Qingqing in his arms and said, "That child you're holding belongs to Dr. Shen's family, right? You can even bring a little kid who can't walk. So why won't you bring adults like us who can walk? I think you'd be better off just throwing away this useless child, since she's completely useless, and she'll only eat more and more." The old lady's drooping eyelids lifted slightly, her eyes full of smugness and arrogance, and her words were sharp and vicious. When Shen Qingqing saw the old lady pointing at her, she looked at Wu Dao too, not understanding what the woman wanted with her, and obediently held out the cherries in her hand. The cherries were dark red, and looked even more tempting in her fair little hand. It was already the apocalypse now, and fruit like this would only become rarer and rarer. It was such a waste to let a child eat them. The old lady swallowed her saliva. There were many people in her family, and they had no habit of storing food. After eating rice porridge for a few days, their food supply was nearly gone, and they hadn't eaten for 2 days already. Now, seeing the cherries, she practically wanted to eat even Shen Qingqing's little hand. Wu Dao walked back a few steps, the axe in his hand crackling with lightning, and the ground beneath his feet slowly turned granular. As he moved, frost formed on his eyebrows and hair, and that youthful face was filled with coldness. As he got closer and closer, the old lady didn't feel any danger at all, nor did she notice that her feet were sinking down, while the air around them had grown much colder. The old man behind her, along with her son, daughter-in-law, and grandson, were so frightened they didn't dare say a word, staring at Wu Dao in terror. The elite-looking man was equally horrified. He kept backing away, cold sweat breaking out on his face. The old lady finally sensed that something was wrong. The smile on her face froze, and just as she was about to say something about Wu Dao respecting the old and caring for the young, her body suddenly sank. And then she fell into a suddenly appearing pit. After being buried inside, not yet completely dead, the old lady let out that kind of horrifying, despairing whimper. After just 2 sounds, there was no more movement. Shen Qingqing even poked out her little head to look, not understanding how such a grown person had just disappeared. Wu Dao pressed down the tuft of hair sticking up on her head. "Qingqing, see that? If trouble itself is just trouble, bury it directly." Shen Qingqing looked at the ground, then at Wu Dao, nodded hard, and even held the cherries in her hand up to his mouth. Wu Dao opened his mouth and ate one in a single bite. It wasn't until he turned and left again that everyone came to their senses. This boy who looked only in his teens had actually buried someone alive over a single sentence from the old lady, and was even teaching a child to be bad like this. In an instant, no one dared speak, especially that elite-looking man, who quietly wiped away his cold sweat with a handkerchief, feeling a wave of fear afterward. Thankfully, he had only been thinking of trying diplomacy before force just now. He had only used diplomacy and hadn't resorted to force yet. Otherwise, the one buried would have been himself. The old lady's family watched helplessly as she was buried, but at this moment, they didn't even dare cry. Outside the residential complex was a large horde of zombies. If they cried out, they would all be finished. On one hand, they resented Wu Dao for being heartless, but on the other hand, they also felt the old lady didn't know how to speak. If she had only spoken a little better, students like this were the softest-hearted and surely wouldn't have done this. And those students, too, stared blankly at Wu Dao's back, instinctively following him. Along the way before this, Wu Dao had only been a bit ruthless when killing zombies. He was like an emotionless humanoid machine, as if he would never get tired. And he had never attacked people before, right? Other than talking too much, they hadn't really done anything either. They had felt very safe, but now he was just as decisive when killing people. Their expressions didn't change in the slightest, and that sent a chill down their spines. Lin Xiaoyu and Zhang Xiao looked the worst. Their legs were weak by now, but they still had to grit their teeth and keep up. The surviving residents looked at each other. An old man whispered, "What do we do?" That elite-looking man turned and ran to check the small storage room, only to find absolutely nothing there, his face turning deathly pale at once. He had never seen the kind of ability Wu Dao had just displayed, and he wasn't stupid, So he naturally realized that the world had changed and there must be different kinds of abilities now. Looking at Wu Dao's back as he had already reached the entrance of the residential complex, his Adam's apple bobbed, and he gritted his teeth and ran after him. Staying behind meant waiting for death anyway. He might as well follow. Maybe there was still a chance to survive. The others, seeing this, followed too. Even the old lady's family chased after them as well. Wu Dao pressed his body against the wall, staring at the situation outside. Based on his observations, zombies used scent and sound to tell direction. This place was a bit out of the way. Although it was close to the school, it happened to be vacation time, so there were fewer people and thus fewer zombies. The zombies outside were wandering aimlessly. At the moment there were about 70 or 80 of them, big and small, some even missing limbs. If they tried to force their way through, those zombies would swarm them all at once. And they weren't moving very fast right now. If they ran, their chances weren't bad. His gaze swept around. About 300 meters away, there was a small truck carrying a load of milk that hadn't been unloaded yet. And there were several zombies around the truck. They were wearing work uniforms, and one of them was still holding several cases of milk. There was a ferocious-looking zombie in the driver's seat, probably the driver. Liang Wei came over and whispered, "Wu Dao, how do we go?" As he asked Wu Dao, he also noticed Shen Qingqing holding a cherry in her hand, casually took it, and ate it in one bite. Shen Qingqing immediately got upset and slapped Liang Wei across the face. Liang Wei had thick skin, though, and even leaned over with a grin to kiss Shen Qingqing once. "How come a little kid like you is so protective of your food?" Wu Dao slapped him on the forehead. "You're not allowed to kiss her. Go draw the aggro. We're going to take that truck." When Liang Wei was kicked out, he was so scared he nearly choked on the cherry pit. He screamed at the top of his lungs, successfully drawing the zombies' attention. He immediately took off running and started circling around. Even the zombies around the small truck ran off. Wu Dao immediately charged toward the small truck. He was incredibly fast, reaching the truck in the blink of an eye, and had Shen Qingqing directly put away the milk on the truck. Then split the zombie in the driver's seat with one axe strike and climbed into the seat himself. Following behind, Jiang Heiyun and Sheng Lin took the opportunity to jump into the truck. The other students scrambled aboard in a panic, afraid that Wu Dao would leave them behind. The residents who were a bit slower lagged behind. Finally, Zhang Xiao and a boy named Li Luo, who got on last, pulled the door shut with all their strength. They could only cry out helplessly. Wu Dao had already released the handbrake, one foot on the clutch and the other on the gas. The truck shot forward, slamming into the zombies, chasing Liang Wei and sending them flying. Then stopped briefly so Liang Wei could grab the passenger side door and jump in. He was panting hard from exhaustion, his forehead covered in cold sweat, his heart pounding wildly. When, from the corner of his eye, he saw a bright red strawberry in Shen Qingqing's hand. Very naturally, he took the strawberry and ate it in one bite. Shen Qingqing looked at her hand, then at Liang Wei's mouth, her big eyes instantly filling with tears. She wrapped her arms around Wu Dao's neck and started crying. Wu Dao kept driving and shot Liang Wei a sharp look. Liang Wei gave an awkward dry laugh. "Qingqing, don't cry. Come here with Big Brother. I'll hold you." Shen Qingqing buried her face in Wu Dao's neck, crying in little hiccuping sobs, completely ignoring him. Some of the people behind them cried, while others copied Wu Dao and just grabbed a random car and ran. That elite guy was very sly, chasing after Wu Dao and the others, obviously wanting to latch onto them. The atmosphere in the car was very heavy, with only Shen Qingqing's soft sobbing to be heard. And at some point, a bright red apple had appeared in her little hand again. It looked extremely tempting just by sight alone. She was wearing a mask and didn't eat it, just held it and played with it. Hearing her crying, some of the others glared at Liang Wei, while some glared at Shen Qingqing. Lin Xiaoyu said softly, "Wu Dao, how about letting me hold Qingqing? It's inconvenient for you to drive." Zhang Xiao muttered quietly, "I told you kids are troublesome, crying, always crying. Throw her out." Wu Dao spoke coldly. Jiang Heiyun grabbed Zhang Xiao and was about to throw her out. Zhang Xiao clung tightly to Sun Haonan. I was wrong. I won't dare do it again." The sound of her crying and begging for mercy was far more grating than Shen Qingqing's whimpering sobs. Just then, Wu Dao made a sharp turn, and her head slammed hard into the side of the car. Her eyes rolled back, and she passed out. The car instantly fell silent. Shen Qingqing looked at Jiang Heiyun and suddenly handed him the apple in her hand. Even though tears were still hanging on her eyelashes, she smiled until her eyes narrowed. How would Jiang Heiyun dare take it? He was afraid this little ancestor would start crying again. What he didn't know was that you can't snatch things from a child. If they willingly give it to you, it's fine. Take it. Wu Dao took a moment to say that, while flooring the gas pedal. The car sped up even more. Zombies lunged forward one after another, and the people in the car were jolted so badly they swayed all over the place, yet no one dared make a sound. Zhang Xiao fainting made the girls shut up completely. Jiang Heyun took the apple and bit into it. The scent of apple spread through the car, and everyone unconsciously swallowed. This apple really did smell amazing. At this moment, Sheng Lin wasn't reserved either. He very naturally leaned over and took a bite, taking half of it in one bite. His mouth was distorted from the size of it, yet he ate with great relish. Jiang Heyun wasn't angry, though. He finished it in 2 bites and tossed the core at his feet. The scene outside the car was basically no different from hell, with wandering zombies everywhere. Traffic accidents were everywhere. Some cars were still smoking, while others had already burned down to their frames. Quite a few residential buildings had signs hanging outside asking for help, some written in several languages. Some people ran together in groups, only to be caught by zombies as they ran. Others, when danger came, shoved the person beside them without the slightest hesitation, crying as they said sorry, while running, only to have their necks bitten through by zombies the very next second. Up ahead of the car, a woman was holding a child and running as fast as she could, while several zombies slowly closed in and were about to catch her. In despair, she kept running while looking back. When she saw Wu Dao driving with a child in his arms, her eyes burst with hopeful light. "Help! Save my child!" She waved, wanting Wu Dao to stop, but Wu Dao plowed through 4 or 5 zombies and showed no intention of stopping at all. Watching the car drive away, the woman grew even more desperate. Carrying the child, she rushed into a small shop nearby, quickly shut the door, and panted heavily, not noticing that zombie blood had splattered into the child's mouth. The little one, not knowing any better, licked up a mouthful of zombie blood and immediately started wailing at the top of his lungs, black lines spreading all over his face. Before long, it turned into a zombie and bit the woman on the neck. The woman was stunned for a moment, clutching the child tightly and crying so hard she could barely speak. Soon, she herself also turned into a zombie. The car drove for about half an hour before stopping at a medium-sized shopping mall. The pursuers behind them had long since disappeared. On the basement level was a supermarket, and the entire floor above was filled with counters selling gold, jewelry, watches, and tablets. The upper floors sold clothes, had arcade games, and all kinds of restaurants. Since the zombie outbreak happened to break out at noon on August 15th, every floor was packed with people. Seeing that Wu Dao had stopped here, Lin Xiaoyu said, "Wu Dao, that day happened to be a holiday, so there must be a lot of zombies inside. We won't be able to get in." Wu Dao tapped the steering wheel with his index finger. "I'm going to the underground storeroom. You wait in the car for now. If there's danger, you can leave first." Jiang Heyun said, "No, it's too dangerous. I'll go with you." Wu Dao said nothing more and stepped on the gas, driving the car into the underground parking garage. The garage was dim and chilly, with only the green safety indicator lights casting a faint glow. The car stopped at the spot closest to the supermarket's basement entrance, and surprisingly, they didn't encounter a single zombie along the way. The entire underground parking garage was so quiet that it felt eerie, and there wasn't even that foul stench unique to zombies in the air. Everyone looked at each other, unconsciously swallowing hard. Wu Dao got out of the car first and headed straight for the storeroom. He had been to this mall several times before and knew the storeroom was on the same level as the garage. The storeroom door was just a very ordinary rolling shutter door, and it so happened that Liang Wei's family had passed down locksmithing for generations. He borrowed a small hairpin from one of the girls, and the door was pulled open. As the shutter door was raised halfway, everyone slipped inside. They hadn't eaten much in the morning to begin with, and after the perilous journey, they were already starving. Now, seeing a whole warehouse full of food, they couldn't wait to run over, tear open the bags, and start wolfing it down. August 15th really was a good holiday. The warehouse was piled with even more gift boxes with all kinds of things in them. Wu Dao leaned close to Shen Qingqing's ear. "Hide as much as you can." Then he took her weaving through the warehouse, and as they passed by, the items on the ground vanished instantly. This warehouse was about over 1,000 square meters, and after more than 10 minutes, they had actually put everything away. Shen Qingqing didn't look tired at all. Instead, she looked very spirited as she stared at Wu Dao, waiting for him to praise her. Wu Dao patted her head. "Good girl." Just then, Zhang Xiao, who had been unconscious in the car outside, let out a sharp scream. Lin Xiaoyu, who was standing at the door, turned around and saw a white cat bigger than a dog standing outside the car. In the pitch-black basement, those cat eyes gave off an eerie green glow. Zhang Xiao, who had just woken up, screamed in fright, and the whole underground parking garage echoed with the sound. With one swipe, the cat smashed open the car window, and its sharp claws were just about to touch Zhang Xiao. Zhang Xiao opened the car door and started running aimlessly. Seeing that everyone was gone, she ran while crying. The cat followed leisurely behind her, swiping at her from time to time. Before long, Zhang Xiao's back was covered in wounds of varying depths, and the pain made her scream even louder, desperately trying to run faster. But the cat seemed to be toying with her, coming at her once in a while, then again after a moment, refusing to give her a quick death. And her loud voice soon attracted the zombies on the first floor. Drawn by the smell of blood, they tumbled down from the elevator. The densely packed zombies rolled down toward the elevator like dumplings being dropped into a pot. Lin Xiaoyu, standing at the warehouse entrance, almost didn't think at all before yanking down the rolling shutter door. The entire warehouse instantly fell into darkness, while outside they listened to Zhang Zhao's shrill screams and curses. Lin Xiaoyu's hands were trembling badly. For a moment, no one spoke. This was the first time they had seen a mutated animal. If a cat had grown that big, what about the others? Would they be even bigger? Tense, anxious emotions spread silently, and even the air seemed to grow thick, making every breath feel stifling and rough. Even though these past few days they had only been running away, they still thought the country was strong and would surely be able to bring things under control, and that things would return to normal in the future. As they ran, they still held on to a bit of luck. Every time they saw others die, while feeling sad and upset, they also thought it was fine as long as it wasn't them. But after seeing the giant cat, that tiny bit of fantasy in their hearts burst like a bubble with a pop. Maybe things really could never go back to the way they were before, and things would only get harder from now on. Shen Qingqing curled up in Wu Dao's arms, looking around uncomfortably. She softly called for Deng Deng. Wu Dao took out a finger-thick flashlight from his pocket and turned it on. Qingqing, it's dark now, so you can sleep. Shen Qingqing, truly exhausted from all the commotion, obediently rested her little face against Wu Dao's neck and then closed her eyes to sleep. And in less than 2 minutes, she was sleeping very soundly. Her innocent, clueless appearance made everyone envious. Given the situation outside, they didn't even dare blink. But this child Shen Qingqing simply went right to sleep. However, now that the loudmouth Zhang Xiao was gone, even if the others had thoughts in their hearts, they wouldn't say them out loud and would only mutter inwardly. The commotion outside went on for a long time. They sat carefully on the floor, not even daring to breathe loudly. Wu Dao also found a corner and gave Shen Qingqing's but a feel. The diaper was already full, so he placed her on his lap and took wet wipes and a new diaper out of his backpack. Liang Wei came over to hold the flashlight for him and help. Seeing that a large patch on Shen Qingqing's butt had turned red and quite a few rashes had appeared, he whispered, "Wu Dao, something's wrong with her butt, isn't it?" Wu Dao snatched the flashlight back and kicked him away. "I'm not blind. Why are you always staring at a little girl's butt? If there's a next time, I'll smack your face with a diaper." Liang Wei. He wanted to say he was just helping, but it felt like Wu Dao had taken him for a pervert. He felt wronged. He was a normal person, okay? After Wu Dao finished tidying Shen Qingqing up, he strapped her back onto himself. With the situation still unclear, they couldn't let their guard down for even a moment. No one knew how much time had passed before the commotion outside finally quieted down. Everyone had waited until they were drowsy, and after being in the dark for so long, they just wanted to yawn and fall asleep. Jiang Heian pressed his ear to the door and held his breath as he listened. Outside had gone quiet again. Just as he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, the door was suddenly struck by a claw, instantly torn open with a big hole. A large white furry paw reached in. Jiang Heian staggered back in terror. He could even see the silky strands of fur on the paw. The others were also so frightened that they kept backing away, screaming in terror, watching helplessly as the giant cat's paw shredded the door as if it were paper. Then an enormous cat head poked in. To their horror, they discovered that this cat's head had grown quite a bit bigger again, which meant its body had grown quite a bit larger as well. Anyone who had kept cats knew that a cat's combat power was actually not low at all. If its size got bigger, and its agility stayed the same as when it was small, then it would basically be a tiger. Meow? A short cat's cry rang out, sharp and thin, making everyone's ears ache so much that they rubbed them uncomfortably. Liang Wei, frightened, edged closer to Wu Dao. "Wu Dao, this cat won't eat us, will it?" Wu Dao said coldly. "Try sticking out your hand. If your hand's gone, That means it'll eat you. If your hand's still there, it won't. Liang Wei, are we still good bros or not? Do we still have true love or not? Wu Dao couldn't even be bothered with this pervert. Guan observed the big cat. The big cat had indeed mutated, but only its body had mutated. It hadn't turned into a zombie. He had never kept a cat and didn't know much about their habits. Judging only from the surface, this cat seemed to be full for the moment. Thinking this, he moved a little closer. The big cat immediately let out a sharp scream at Wu Dao, those green eyes full of wariness, and even its eyes had become much rounder, and the fur on its body had all puffed up, with a rumbling warning in its throat. Xiao Jiasen said softly, I've kept cats before. This cat, it looks very anxious. After a pause, she continued, white cats have the lowest status in the cat world. Their personalities are docile, inferiority-ridden, and sensitive. This is written into their genes. Even if they've grown bigger, that can't be changed. Sheng Lin pushed up his glasses. That was before the apocalypse. Now it's after the apocalypse. No one can guarantee this cat is still the same as before. Lin Xiaoyu, pale-faced, quietly edged a little closer behind Wu Dao. Then what do we do now? We can't just keep blocking this place forever, can we? Sun Haonan whispered. Wu Dao, can you kill this thing? Liang Wei snorted softly. Are you planning to help? With that one sentence, Sun Haonan's expression turned ugly. These past few days he's talked a good game, but in reality, he hasn't killed a single zombie. Every time danger shows up, he runs faster than anyone else. The fact that he survived until now with his clothes still clean really isn't easy. Wu Dao continued walking out, getting very close to the big cat. The fur on the big white cat stood up even more, and that fluffy face strangely carried a look of vigilance. It seemed this cat wasn't stupid. It could sense the dangerous aura around Wu Dao. It just looked like it still hadn't properly weighed its own combat strength and was obviously showing timidity. But after backing away 3 or 4 steps, one of its hind legs suddenly tilted slightly, its body sprang, and it swatted at Wu Dao with one paw. Wu Dao turned sideways and rolled on the spot, ending up outside. Only then did he realize that all the zombies outside were gone. So clean it was just like when they had first come down into the basement. He had clearly seen many zombies tumble down from the first floor just now. At least 200 or 300 of them. You could tell from the roaring. But now all the zombies in the entire basement were gone, and even the filthy blood on the ground had been cleaned away completely. Jiang Heiyun, who had run out with him, swallowed and said, Wu Dao, this thing eats zombies. Wu Dao narrowed his eyes. Let's test it. He brought his blade down on the elevator railing, producing a loud clang. Sure enough, the zombies upstairs crowded to the corner opening just like before, then babbled and tumbled down. And before long another 100+ zombies had dropped into the basement. When the big cat saw those zombies, its fur clearly bristled, and those round eyes opened wide. It looked very unhappy. Then it stopped caring about the people altogether. Its snow-white body leaped forward into the horde of zombies, opening its mouth wide and swallowing them in just a few bites each. Its body was agile and its strength immense. And those zombies had almost no ability to resist at all. They didn't even know how to run, just stupidly crashing into the white cat. The zombies disappeared very quickly, and the big white cat visibly grew another size larger. After finishing off the zombies, it began licking the bloodstains on the ground, until it had licked all the zombie blood completely clean. Only after restoring the basement to its previous neat cleanliness did it turn its gaze back to Wu Dao. This time its eyes were extremely fierce, and without the slightest hesitation it pounced at Wu Dao and the others. Wu Dao, Liang Wei, and the others turned and ran toward the supermarket entrance next door. Liang Wei and the others had run over while the big cat was eating the zombies. It wasn't that they weren't afraid, but they were thinking that if they were going to die, they'd die together. Being young was good that way. When charging forward, you could cower, or you could rush in recklessly. Just now the zombies had only been falling from upstairs, and none had come out of the supermarket, which meant there probably weren't any zombies inside either. The few of them rushed into the supermarket in one breath, and the big white cat surprisingly didn't follow them in, but turned and left. This supermarket wasn't very big, only about 1,500 square meters. Quite a few shelves were leaning every which way, and even more goods were scattered all over the floor. And the air faintly gave off the stench of rotting food mixed with the stench of rotting zombies. Liang Wei took a clean sausage from a shelf, tore open the packaging, and wolfed it down in big bites. He muttered quietly that he hadn't expected that big cat to be such a neat freak. Wu Dao and the others, meanwhile, looked over the entire supermarket. There was a large stockpile of goods inside, which showed that no one had come here after the zombie outbreak. Zhang Heiyun walked up to a door with the word office written outside and observed that it was shut tightly. There was a high chance someone was still inside. He whispered, Wu Dao, there's probably someone here. Wu Dao said flatly, leave them alone. He gently touched Shen Qingqing's little face. Qingqing, did you sleep well? Wu Dao knew that Shen Qingqing had actually woken up long ago. She had just been playing pretend with her eyes closed. Hearing Wu Dao call her, she immediately opened her eyes and pointed outside. Kitty what? Wu Dao's face twitched slightly, and he found a furry toy cat from the shelf where toys were sold for Shen Qingqing to play with. Shen Qingqing hugged the cat, smiling so hard her eyes curved into crescents. Then he took Shen Qingqing along to start collecting things. Shen Qingqing was a child after all. Some things she could understand, while others she only understood vaguely. And when it came to collecting things, she collected everything. Anything stained with a little zombie blood, as well as anything that had been stepped on and damaged, was all put into the space. Row after row of shelves disappeared at high speed. And Wu Dao kept watching Shen Qingqing's expression. Seeing that she showed not the slightest discomfort, he wondered how big this child's space really was. They had already stored so many things, yet it still had room. The snacks section, the beverages and alcohol section, the gift box section, the seasonings section, the bulk goods section, the dried goods section, and the instant noodles and side food section had all been collected. At the moment, only the daily necessities section and the meat and vegetable area were left. Liang Wei had been following behind, watching the whole time, and couldn't help exclaiming, Wu Dao, your space is just way too powerful. You already stored so much stuff before, and it can still hold more. Sure enough, sticking with you is absolutely the right choice. From now on, in this apocalypse, I'll just cling to you. I'll do the work and won't have to worry about food. If I follow you, I definitely won't starve. Wu Dao said nothing and kept walking. They had just collected half of the daily necessities section when the office door was yanked open, and a bald man in a white short-sleeved shirt rushed out, staring wide-eyed as he shouted in a low voice, Stop! 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 Who are you people? Who are you people? Huh, are those yours? You just snatched them? I'm warning you. Put the stuff back for me, or when the army arrives and this matter gets dealt with, I'll sue you all. When that time comes, every single one of you can just wait to end up in jail. Then a woman in office attire and high heels also ran out. Looking at the supermarket, now more than half emptied, her eyes turned red. You bunch of little robbers, put everything back right now. Do you have any idea how much those things are worth? After that, several middle-aged women in red vests came out as well. They looked like supermarket stock clerks, glaring fixedly at Wu Dao and the others. If they weren't afraid of the monsters outside, they probably would have started cursing already. Shen Qingqing looked at these fierce-looking people, then at Wu Dao, and immediately hid her little face in Wu Dao's arms, pretending they couldn't see her. Amused, Wu Dao patted her butt, but when he looked at those people his gaze suddenly turned cold. You scared the child. The bald man shrank back in fright. You brat looks way too vicious. You stole our stuff, and you still think you're in the right. At some point Liang Wei had picked up an unspoiled green onion, took a bite of it wrapped together with ham and a pancake, then pointed outside and said unclearly, Uncle, are you really stupid or just pretending? Have you gone outside these past few days? Do you know what it's like out there? Do you know that everything outside is already in complete chaos? That can't be right. Even though the network isn't completely down yet, how come it's totally cut off on your end? If nothing else, should we let the big cat outside come in and lick you a couple times to wake you up? A stock clerk auntie in a red vest stepped out and pointed at Liang Wei as she said, One look at you and it's obvious you're no decent person. How did your family raise you? Liang Wei raised the knife in his hand and said with a smile, Auntie, ever seen a beheading? How about you make a tiny sacrifice and set an example for them? With that light, casual remark, the auntie turned pale with fright, her lips purple at once. It was obvious she had a bad heart. And in normal times, in a situation like this, she probably would have already collapsed and tried to scam someone. Another auntie beside her quickly took medicine out of her pocket and fed her a pill, then looked at Liang Wei reproachfully. Do you even know she has heart disease? Scaring someone to death like this is against the law. Do you know that? Even if things are chaotic outside right now, you still look like a student, don't you? So how can you have so little public decency? Youped. Before the auntie could finish speaking, there was an extra knife in her chest. She mechanically lowered her head and looked at the knife in her chest, unable to understand how, after only saying a few fair words, this emotionally unstable kid had stabbed her. She looked blankly at Liang Wei, and Liang Wei spread his hands. Oops, sorry. We're allergic to old people lecturing us, so my hand slipped. The auntie coughed up a mouthful of blood in fury and fell stiffly to the ground. Seeing the auntie fall to the ground, blood bubbling from her mouth, reaching out to her for help, the auntie who had just taken the medicine was so frightened she almost screamed. But the medicine wasn't helping at all. Clutching her chest, she staggered back 2 steps and covered her mouth tightly. This time, she truly didn't dare make a sound. The bald man had clearly not expected young people nowadays to be this tough. And even if the world was in chaos, to kill so smoothly and casually made him suspect they were never ordinary students to begin with. He scrutinized Wu Dao and the others with a searching gaze. The other supermarket employees were also stunned, and no one dared say another word, afraid of running into the edge of the knife. Liang Wei turned and threw Shen Qingqing a flirtatious look. "Qingqing, isn't your brother awesome?" Looking at that auntie, Shen Qingqing popped out a single word. "Sleep?" Wu Dao gave a soft "Yes, asleep." Shen Qingqing immediately smiled until her eyes narrowed and handed the plush toy in her hands to Liang Wei. Liang Wei pinched her chubby little hand. "Big brother doesn't play with that. You play with it yourself." Wu Dao ignored those people and continued taking Shen Qingqing around to collect things. The remaining daily necessities were basically swept clean in one go. And after that they went to the vegetable and meat section. Aside from potatoes, eggplants, radishes, and other vegetables that keep well, the leafy greens placed outside had basically all rotted. Nearly all the meat displayed outside had gone bad, covered with maggots. Those plump, fleshy worms writhed and squirmed, looking extremely disgusting. Then there were the things in the freezers: frozen dumplings, tangyuan, wraps, burgers, meat sausages, hot pot balls, and the like. Since the supermarket hadn't lost power yet, they were all still edible, so they took the refrigerated cases along with them. Seeing that the only things left in the entire supermarket were the foul-smelling ones, the supermarket employees finally broke down. Back when the zombie outbreak first happened, that bald manager had grabbed 2 boxes of instant noodles and hauled over a case of bottled water, calling the employees to hide inside the room. Over the past few days, hearing the commotion outside, they hadn't even dared to go out the door, only hoping the country would send rescue and save them too. That little bit of food was nowhere near enough to split among them, and after these past few days, they had long since been starving beyond endurance. They had originally been thinking about seeing if they could find something to eat today. After all, since they were in a supermarket, finding food should have been easy, but unfortunately now that they had come out, there wasn't even a scrap of food left in the supermarket. They huddled together and whispered, discussing countermeasures, while Wu Dao led Shen Qingqing and called the others to get ready to leave. This supermarket wasn't safe. That giant cat was guarding outside, and who knew when it might suddenly go crazy and charge in. A cat that big was something they simply couldn't handle, so at a time like this, all they could do was run. They had only taken 2 steps when the bald manager suddenly spoke up. Wait. Kids, hold on a second." He forced a smile onto his chubby face. "Kids, I know you're all very capable. Could you leave us a little food? There's so much food anyway, and you can't finish it all. We people haven't eaten for several days already. Without food, we really can't hold on. We don't want much, just give each of us a few packs of instant noodles. And a few bottles of water will do." Wu Dao turned his head and looked at the several older aunties. Before he could speak, that young woman suddenly pointed at Wu Dao and said, "It's you. I know you. Before, you were the one who extorted an old lady and made her family pay 100,000 yuan. That old lady was so angry because of you that she was hospitalized, and she died a few days later. Back then, you didn't even say a single word of apology." After her reminder, those aunties also remembered having seen it before while scrolling videos. Because during those days, they would basically come across it once every 2 or 3 videos. Nearly the entire internet was cursing that utterly deranged boy. Some people even edited funeral portraits of him and cursed him to die. If an ordinary person encountered something like that, they wouldn't be able to bear it mentally. Even if they didn't go kill themselves, at the very least they'd end up depressed. But he, of all people, was completely fine, still eating and drinking as usual. A few days later, there was another new piece of news, and only then did the hype around this story die down. They also hadn't expected to be so unlucky as to run into this black-hearted boy at a time like this. For a moment, everyone had only one thought in their minds: we're done for. Someone like this clearly isn't normal, so how could he possibly be that kind-hearted? Wu Dao revealed a strange smile at them, repeated a few words into Shen Qingqing's ear, and then a small box of mooncakes and 2 bottles of mineral water appeared in his hand. He set the things on the ground. I hope that the next time we meet, you'll all still be alive. After leaving those words behind, he prepared to go. When the bald manager saw the things on the ground, his expression changed slightly. There were 7 of them in total, but there were only 6 mooncakes in that box, plus 2 bottles of mineral water. After being hungry for so long, it was simply nowhere near enough for the few of them to divide. Rather than leaving them food, this was more like messing with them and provoking internal conflict. Without even thinking, he immediately called out anxiously in a low voice, "Wait, wait, wait. It's dangerous outside. I know of an internal door that leads directly to the first floor." Wu Dao turned around and said very naturally, "Let's go." Seeing him suddenly being so agreeable, the bald manager didn't react for a moment. Jiang Heiyun said irritably, "Move, then. Lead the way." "What? Are you waiting for us to carry you in a grand sedan chair?" The bald manager quickly led the way, walking to the inner side of the supermarket, where there was a staircase that led directly up to the first floor. Seeing this, the supermarket employees hurried over and ran upstairs as well. If they didn't run now, staying behind would be risking their lives for that white cat. The young woman in high heels had been quietly sizing up Wu Dao the whole time. Seeing that he was 1.85 meters tall, with a slim, lean, upright figure, he didn't look like a teenage boy at all, but rather gave off the feeling of a grown man. That face of his was cold, sharp, and handsome, even better looking than the movie stars and award-winning actors on TV, and there was little emotion in his eyes. Yet when he held the child in his arms and occasionally let his gaze fall on the child, his eyes would soften. She thought to herself that maybe this person wasn't as bad as people online said. If he could be this good to a child, then he must be soft-hearted. Besides, he was still a high school student. Sometimes getting impulsive and doing something foolish, wasn't that normal? Thinking this, she quickened her pace and followed behind Wu Dao. She even secretly took out a piece of candy she had been hiding in her pocket and quietly handed it to Shen Qingqing. Shen Qingqing had never eaten candy before. Annie had never let her eat that kind of junk, so she didn't recognize it at all. She just thought the wrapper was pretty, so she reached out and took it. By this time, they had already reached the stairwell door to the first floor. The bald manager didn't dare open it. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, pointed at the door, and motioned for Wu Dao to open it himself. Wu Dao reached out and opened the door. A slight creaking sound rang out, and the zombies around the door immediately turned and charged over. Wu Dao quickly shut the door again, and the zombies slammed into it with a bang, then began pounding on it hard. Terrifying roars came from their mouths, and the ordinary wooden door rattled loudly from the impacts, on the verge of collapse. A door like that simply couldn't withstand these zombies pressing and crashing against it for long. The people who had been hiding in the supermarket for days had never seen anything like this before. They instinctively opened their mouths and screamed, then turned and tried to run back down. However, after running down only a few steps, they saw a huge head blocking the stairway entrance. It turned out the white cat had come over after hearing the commotion. When the young woman in high heels saw the white cat, a flash of delight crossed her eyes. She softly called out, "Xiaobai, how did you suddenly get so big?" When the old lady who had taken heart medication saw the white cat, her expression changed slightly. She muttered in a low voice, "How did this stray cat become like this? Why does it look so scary?" The big cat meowed, its body having grown quite a bit larger again as it squeezed through the narrow staircase, stepping with cat-like grace as it slowly made its way up. But in the blink of an eye, they were trapped in this narrow stairwell, with zombies in front and the big cat below, making it hard to advance or retreat. Suddenly, with a loud crack, a hole was actually smashed out in the middle, and a filthy zombie hand, with skin and flesh already peeling away to reveal bone, reached in. Gripping the axe, Wu Dao chopped off that hand in one swing. He turned his head and signaled to Jiang Heiyun. Jiang Heiyun gave a slight nod. Wu Dao yanked the door open, and Jiang Heiyun slashed down with his blade. He was originally a strength-type ability user, so the force behind this strike was extraordinary. The few zombies blocking the doorway were all chopped into two, and all kinds of rotten organs and filthy blood instantly spilled all over the floor. The upper and lower halves moved separately. A lot of blood and grime splattered onto Shen Qingqing's forehead and mask, and a chunk of flesh even landed on her head, but she had no time to wipe it off. Her two little hands clutched tightly at the clothes on Wu Dao's chest, her eyes wide as she watched the brutal scene. The people behind them were even worse than a child, their screams even more piercing as they all covered their faces and shouted. These shrill screams provoked the big cat that had just squeezed its way up. The big cat's eyes instantly turned blood red, and it opened its mouth and bit into one auntie's leg. When the auntie's leg met those sharp teeth, the bone was like a ball of cotton, and in the blink of an eye one leg was gone. The pain only came a moment later, and losing her balance, the auntie fell downward, and her fat body squeezed the big cat and sent it tumbling down as well. The auntie howled in heart-rending agony, reaching out for help, but the big cat ate too fast, and tasting fresh flesh and blood for the first time, it ate with great delight. The auntie soon stopped moving. Seeing this, the others shoved against each other, terrified of falling down. After eating a person, the big cat's eyes were no longer clear. That blood-red color would not fade. As the aunties shoved one another, for more people soon fell down, completely blocking the stairway entrance. Wu Dao and the others rushed out of the lobby. There were only a dozen or so scattered zombies, clearly because they had been lured to the underground parking garage earlier. These zombies were very easy to deal with. But Shen Qingqing had set her sights on the sparkling things in the counters. She kept reaching out and saying she wanted them. So Wu Dao took her over to collect them and casually grabbed a fist-sized gold pig from a display stand for Shen Qingqing to play with. The gold and jewelry counters were cleared out one by one. Just as they were finishing the last one, the main door was suddenly pushed open and a group of people burst in from outside, all covered in blood. With fierce looks in their eyes, men, women, old and young alike. Leading them was a bald, burly man, 2 meters tall, broad and thick, with a gold chain as thick as a dog chain hanging around his neck, and a scar running across his face, making his already fierce features look even more terrifying. The bald brute spotted Wu Dao at a glance, as well as the gold pig Shen Qingqing was holding. Though young, Shen Qingqing was clever and sensed that this person had come to snatch her things. Looking extremely sneaky, she directly put away the last counter, then pretended to be very busy, playing happily with the gold pig in her hands and even leisurely swinging her legs. The big man sized up Wu Dao and spoke directly. "Kid, you're a space ability user, right? Follow me from now on, and I'll raise that little brat in your arms for free." Wu Dao said indifferently, "No need." He took Shen Qingqing and continued collecting the remaining electronics, completely ignoring those people. Seeing that more than a dozen watch counters had been taken and only some tablets and phones remained uncollected, the bald man said with a dark face, "Little brother, don't be too arrogant in how you act. Times are chaotic now, and they're not the same as before.